$5 in the box, you get a book. And so what the book is, it says Of Miracles and Threads of Time. I was thinking of Mice and Men. Do you remember that by John Steinbeck, one of our greater writers? And so I said, well, that's why I called it Of Miracles and Threads of Time. And the little illustration here, I say that these threads are threads of time that have become detached from the background, which is look like all these little hexagons. And I call that, well, that partition of hexagons, that's like the other kind of time that the Course refers to once in the whole book. It says there is it says time is not sequential like you think it is. Time is really other than that. Time is really non-sequential. He does not belabor that or go on with it because we would not know what he's talking about. I mean, we cannot conceive of time not being one moment after another, sequential. You know, this one has to come after that one. You see, we're just not, our minds are not set up like that. But evidently, there's some kind of time that is closer to reality than ordinary time. Because he says how time really is. You say, well, are you saying time is real? No, you're not saying that. Any more than when you say the real world is real. You don't really mean it's real. It just is closer to reality. It can be transferred to it with true perception. Well, evidently time is, there must be something, a form of time that is not something we could deal with easily, non-sequential time, but it's closer to timelessness. No time. What a big jump. Sometimes it helps you to know how big the jump is to tell you an intermediate step, and you think, oh, well, that was pretty big. Well, the whole jump blows me away, see. Well, we'll go to the little intermediate step first. Anyway, that's what I had in mind with these little hexagons in there. They're all connected. They're all sharing a side. You see. Well, a thread of time has been pulled out from that, and you follow some thread of time during your stay here. But eventually, I was thinking, well, what would be how would you get back to this more realistic type time? Well, if you've got a thread of time, you want the thing about time is that it allows cause and effect. That's what time does. If there's timelessness, cause and effect are all the same. I mean, they're not separated. Time allows the cause to be on Monday and the effect to be on Friday or whatever. See you later. It separates them. It's a isolated thread here. There's the cause and there's the effect. And I said, well, if we want to get back toward these little hexagons, this is all metaphors, of course. The Course doesn't say anything about a hexagon. There's nothing special, as far as I know, about a hexagon. It's just that the app that I had on Adobe Illustrator had hexagons, so, there you are.
It works.
You get hexagons.
Yeah.
So if you want to go that way, what do you need to do if we want to bring, well, you can imagine one end of the thread having a cause and the other end having an effect. So if you will join the two ends, then cause is not separate from effect anymore. Where the cause is, the effect is. You say, well, that's a nice, pretty picture. What does that mean, practice? Does the Course say anything about that? As a matter of fact, it does. It says, maybe it doesn't say, I want you to join cause and effect, but I mean, that phrase may not be there. But it's exactly what it's saying when it talks about in chapter 21, I think it is, about your responsibility for sight. It says that my mind, cause, is responsible for everything that I see and everything that happens to me. Effect. It's putting them in, and so it's putting them to get cause and effect together. So as a matter of fact, it is doing just that. Jesus is saying the cause of your car accident wasn't the other car. It was your thought about da-da-da, whatever. Maybe you were thinking about car accidents and how much you didn't want to have one.
There's that. Yeah, left out that didn't.
And so there it is, you see. Your thoughts are kind of dangerous in a way. You got to pay attention to them. You can't just, well, in fact, Jesus says as much. He says you're too tolerant about what kind of thoughts you let come into your about mind wandering. You need to be vigilant. Your mind is potent and powerful. We come here and we want it to be very weak so we can have any kind of ridiculous thought that we want for as long as we want, and then wonder later why we're so sick, or why we had so many car accidents, you know. I had a car accident last week, by the way. I've been telling you, this is just an aside, that maybe I mentioned it, that my brakes are having trouble with my brakes, that when I stop at the corner I got to pump the thing or it'll start rolling backwards or forwards, whichever way the road is inclined. And somebody said, well, you got a leak, one of you all said, you got a leak in your brake system someplace. Yeah. I always check the little reservoir to make sure there's enough fluid, and if it doesn't, I put some in it, but that didn't help very much. I still had to do that because it got a leak. Well, I was really convinced of the need to do something the other day when I pulled into a parking place, and you know those concrete slabs that they have, so you won't keep going and go into the building, and if you're pulling up to
wheel stops.
Well, I just crashed into that little slab because I put the brake on it and nothing happened. And I didn't stop. I didn't stop to think about I should be pumping it. There's something in your mind that says when there's an imminent possibility for collision, don't take your foot off the brake. If you had time to reflect, well, I got to pump. No, keep the foot on the brake. Crash. So I crashed into that little thing. I said, well, I better get these fixed. That's just an exclamation point. Now let's go get. So my car has a new master cylinder.
Finally.
Finally. So I'm happy with that now. I can relax when I stop at the corner. I don't have to sit there checking to make sure I'm rolling or that I'm not rolling. I know I'm not going to roll. My foot is on the brake. Well, we need to put our foot on the brake of random thoughts. Because if you don't, you'll crash into the little deal, you know, at some point. I don't know how long it'll take. It might take a while. But you're just to be more vigilant about mind wandering, I believe is the way the Course says that. There's another part where it says, and this is in the 3 lessons of that the Holy Spirit teaches. Right in the first, toward the first of the Course in Miracles, it says, be vigilant only for God and His kingdom. We do not take this seriously. Are you kidding? I'm thinking about the baseball game I saw yesterday. Is that God and His kingdom? Well, no. Well, I'm thinking about how hungry I am, and I want a nice, big, beautiful sandwich to eat. Is that about God and His kingdom? No. None of us, well, I don't really have the right to speak for you like that. I'll say it anyway. None of you do that. Because I'm pretty sure I'm on solid ground, and I'll just put myself in the group in there too. Because I do know I have thoughts other than that. Was it wrong to have such thoughts? No. Thinking it's wrong is incorrect. But having them is not wrong. It's just that you're putting a cause into effect, into play, that will have an effect later. That's all. And of course, I don't mind then thinking about the nice sandwich because I fully plan to go have one as soon as this meeting's over. And that will be its effect, I presume. But you must pay attention to what kind of thoughts in your mind. They'll show up later in your life in some unpleasant way. Well, no, they can show up in a pleasant way too, for that matter. That's fine. But we particularly don't want, so if you're thinking the unpleasant ones, you know. I can remember watching. I was over at a friend's house watching a football game or something, and they had a commercial. And evidently there was a policeman on the commercial talking about how important it is to buckle up your seatbelt. And I thought about that. I thought, oh, that's neat. They stop you and tell you to do your seatbelt and all this. And so as I was driving home, sure enough, woo, 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 behind me, that sound, you know, and I pull over and I say, oh, what's the problem? I didn't say anything, actually. I let him talk. That's always best.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, it is.
You know, I have nothing I need to say.
Experience.
And he says, why do you do that for? He told me, I've forgotten now what the reason was. Well, he had a reason, whatever. Oh, but maybe he saw that I didn't have my seatbelt on. Maybe that was it, because that's what he gave me the ticket for. Must have been that.
I think that was it.
Yeah. I've had to pay $10 there, and from then on I've worn the seatbelt. But for the previous 20 years, I just didn't wear one because it's a defense. I just took it as a defense. I said I don't need it. Well, I still don't need it. But I just don't want to give another $10 or whatever to the city for that. But the point though was that I had previously thought about wearing a seatbelt and the policeman, and so sure enough, an hour later, driving home, there he was. There are no accidents. See, that's what the Course wants to say. We don't have accidents. You have thoughts, they are causes, they're going to produce effects, and they don't pay attention to your adjectives, you know, like I want it, I don't want it, stuff like that.
Don't care.
Yeah, or if I used to be, I'd make trips to Nashville occasionally, and I would be thinking to my mind, do I really have all the tools in the trunk for a flat tire? Then there's big boom. You got a flat tire. You know, I just happened to happen several times. In those days, I didn't know not to I thought I was preparing myself. Well, I was.
Yeah.
And more literally than I really intended, you know. I was preparing for the flat tire. There it is. So I can get out and fix it, you know. So I think it's in the second or third chapter where it talks about the Holy Spirit's 3 lessons, and one is, again, be vigilant only for God and His kingdom. We think about a lot of other things. If you actually, and you know, I'm so impressed by these people that I read about. They seem like they're mostly from India. That there's a woman that there's no thought in her mind. She wants no thought in her mind except the thought of God. So she says the name of God. In India, Hindu, and they have many names for God. You don't have to be saying God, 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 God. You could God, Lord, whatever. I mean, Elohim. I mean, there are many names. We don't have so many. Yeah, there are many names, but in the Indian language. And she doesn't want to have anything in her mind but the name of God. And so she repeats it again and again and again and nothing else. And most of us would think about, our main thought about that would be, oh my God, how horrible, you're missing the whole world. I'm sure she'd say, God. Because she doesn't think about the world with you. You know, instead of saying, no, I don't think about the world and I'm not missing anything, she would simply say, what she does want. You always want to think about what you want and not what you don't want. God and His kingdom, that, you know, yes, that's great. But because God, and that's God's will. What is God's will for you? Perfect happiness right now. See? Whereas we prefer to have happiness, imperfect happiness, a little bit later. I need to worry about it for a little bit. See if I'm prepared. Do I have all the tools in the car to fix a flat tire, etc. Your mind is potent, and we just I think not just you, we forget that. You say, well, I don't want it to be potent. I want to just be able to think about whatever I want to think about. Fine. You're allowed. It's called life on planet Earth. But you don't have to do it that way.
The Course says if you're not thinking with God, you're not thinking.
Not thinking at all.
So you're just kind of freewheeling. Yeah, and maybe that's why it becomes so chaotic, because you're not thinking if you're not thinking with God, and so you have all these cause and effects.
If you're not thinking with God, which means with the Holy Spirit as well, who are you thinking with? The ego.
The ego.
I mean, there's the only two. That's a really unusual, well, maybe not, but it seems to me it's kind of an unusual way to set things up for the Course to tell you there are only two voices in your mind. By voices, it just means sources of thought. That's all that means. It doesn't mean you have to be hearing someone speaking with foreign language or something inside your head. It's just there are two sources of thought. You didn't realize, I didn't ever realize that. I always thought there were three. I felt, yes, there was a divine source, and then there was a non-divine force. So the Course calls it the ego. When I was young, I wouldn't have called it that. Carnal self probably is what was the biblical term that I had learned. But the Course says, but if there was a third in my mind, and that was my voice.
Yeah.
There's God's voice, the ego's voice, and then there's my voice. And the Course says, Jesus says, there is no such thing as your voice. You're voiceless. All you do is, there's two sources here. You join with this one, or you join with that one. You don't speak. You're mute. You just repeat, listen to, and then say with your mouth, if you want to say with your mouth, whatever the ego is telling you, or whatever the Holy Spirit's saying. This affronts me. This is a personal insult, almost, to say that I don't have a voice, you know. That's why it's so hard for us to pull into that, but it says we don't. You're either listening to the ego, or you're listening to the Holy Spirit.
I like to think of it as I'm part of the positive, but I choose to listen to the negative, which is the ego. So there, like you said, there can't be three. I'm already part of the good, the love.
By default.
But by default. But I choose to listen to the ego sometimes.
Yes.
How does God think? I mean,
All his
that's
thoughts are
profound and heady, but can we go there?
perfectly.
And try to tap into that?
It would be something we would not be capable of understanding, but when his thoughts are creations, he will create a living entity with his thought, just as he created you, me, and everyone else. The Course says we're all thoughts of God. So if you want to know how he thinks, look around. Except that it's all distorted. You're not really seeing the true creation and the purity of the true creation when you look in this world, because it's a fallen world. And we see the distortions that we've placed on it. We are thoughts of God. That's what we are. And we're not something else. That's why we don't have another voice. He didn't create a being. The Course says that God created beings who have everything. He did it by thinking of them, a thought. But who want to increase their joy by sharing. And so that is our natural thing, is when we individualize like this, we're an individual, we become like an individual thought, but we increase our joy then. We were talking about joy early. We do it by sharing. And the ego can't share, you see. So you have the choice of sharing through spirit with others, or you have the choice, or the other choice is to separate with the thought of the ego. The ego will always tell you how you're a better thought of God than somebody else. They're a poor thought. Well, God doesn't have better or poor thought. His thoughts are his thoughts, and they're perfect. And that's what you are. In general, while we're here, we will like things that are concrete. We're really used to seeing other forms, bodies, chairs, cars, whatever. We're going to have to give that up. It's not reality. And what reality is better, not worse than that. See, most people will feel if I give that up, I'm going to be offered. Well, they feel to be bored in heaven. Well, that's a real primitive view of heaven. But The real concern about being in his heaven is I'll be too joyful to stand it.
Can't be that
I will not
happy.
be able to tolerate it. That would be more reasonable attitude, I think. I think they were saying that they agree with the joy part.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to bring this to a head, or to a conclusion rather, and say that these books, I would say another word about these books before we all head out, and that is they're right there, and if you want to buy them, please feel free. I have 23, well, I came in here with 23, let's put it that way, and that's all there are at $10. Later, they'll be, if they're bought off the website, they will cost more, because it's the box. Oh, wrong box. This is another box, it's just as good. But you don't get a book.
What about, are these already signed? Are you gonna sign?
If you want me to, I'll sign, I'll be happy to do that, yeah. Okay.
We need a book signing.
But the money for the books goes there, the money for our donations goes here. I want to make sure that, I got confused, so I wanted to make sure it didn't translate
There is no
over
separation.
to you all.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna conclude with this. It's really nice. It's always nice. Oh, I knew there was another thing. I left off something important in this book. And it's the first time I've ever done that. And well, yeah. Well said.
Sound like you didn't believe that.
You're trying to be serious.
Oh, dear.
But what I was referring to particularly was I didn't have a page of acknowledgments in this book. I just forgot.
Oh.
I'm forgetting everything these days. And in the other books, I always had an acknowledgement, and you all are always acknowledged in these books.
Oh.
And in the later editions, you will not be overlooked.